Am I in front of the camera? All right. Good evening, everybody. We're going to start this meeting a little bit early tonight. I have no idea what it is, but it's somewhere between 7:15 and 7:30, so we'll run with it. It's 7:21. We're right on time. Thank you, folks. All right. This meeting is going to be a little bit different. Usually we start off with the agenda. We go around the room with introductions, and then I do opening comments, and then we get into the program. If you read the note that came out, really discussing what the program would be for this meeting, you all have already come to the conclusion that you folks and the folks on the Zoom are the program. This is show and tell. What are we going to show and what are we going to tell? Well, we're going to show ourselves and tell everybody about us. And the theory here and why, and this was a discussion we had at a board of directors meeting, and I'll tell you whose idea it was if it was a good idea. If it was a bad idea, then we won't say anything, okay? But we've got a lot of new members, and we've had usually almost a couple a month for the last year or so. And some of us that have been here a while know each other, but there's probably quite a few people that don't know us. We certainly don't know them. And we thought that the show and tell would give us an opportunity to meet people a little bit better. So that's the good news. The bad news is, how many people do we have, Lori, total tonight, roughly? Okay, 25 people. So, okay, the agenda is not up. So what we've figured is we're going to give everybody 2 to 3 minutes to tell us something unique about yourself that you want to share. Okay, I have some 3x5 cards here that I will pass around. What I would suggest, since it's 2 to 3 minutes, if any of you are known to ramble, put some thought joggers down here, because rambling, you're going to hear that. Remember that tone you hear, that that's Beulah the buzzer. You are done when that thing goes off. So that buzzer is at 2.5 minutes, and everybody has 3 minutes maximum to talk about what they would like to tell everybody about themselves. Now, one more interesting fact, as you know, and you just heard, Lori turned on the recorder. So this probably should be pretty G-rated, because this gets recorded and it also goes on the OCRA YouTube channel. So, and it's publicly accessible. So, so, we're not going to listen to Wilson tonight, because I don't know if he can be G-rated or not. He's thinking about that. He's trying to come up with something G-rated. So, so that's what we're going to try. Okay. And here, let me see if I can stand up first. You go ahead and pass these around if you want to. Just grab a few and let me pass the other side. Yeah, just pass them around. Okay, that's not working. All right. So feel free to take some notes, and we'd like to get a volunteer that would like to go first. And we're going to try to go through the room first and then to Zoom. Wait, we got a volunteer over there. Okay, Randy would like to go first. So let me do this. And okay, there's Randy is now. Now, one more thing. Let me bring up one more thing tonight. You'll note that this fine gentleman here in the front corner of the room does not look like Mark. Okay, Mark is in St. Louis tonight watching the eclipse this afternoon on his way to his new house in Washington State. So this is our first night that we have the new equipment together. So everything tonight this is our first shot. So miraculously enough, I think we have run out of most cables. All the connectors are plugged in somewhere. We have video, we have audio, we have Zoom, we have projector. So Wilson, fine job. Really appreciate it. I know you and Dan spent some time over at your house on the dining room table, plugging things in and trying to get them working. And we took a chance on this microphone. This is a whole $32 worth of wireless microphone, and it works, and it seems to have pretty good audio. So let me go over to Randy and give him the microphone, and he can be person number 1. And you'll see up here somewhere, you won't see it, Lori will start the timer up when you start, and then you'll hear the sound when you have 30 seconds left. There you go, sir.
I got my phone here too, so I'm good. So I'm Randy, KF40 in Hillsboro. Got my novice in 1970 when I was 16. And for a 16-year-old, I ran phone patches from servicemen and missionaries out in Africa and Antarctica. And that was fantastic for a 16-year-old. And then got my advanced, and then I got my extra 20 words a minute in 97. And went to Taiwan with my wife. We spent 29 years there. I'm a family practice doctor. We church planted there, and I was BV8 / KF40 there. Had worked with several doctors, Guam, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, and we would share our cases together. So that was quite a trip. That was long before the internet. 2015, we came back to the States, worked for Duke for 6 years, and hobbies, photography, astronomy. We were out looking at the eclipse today with the neighborhood and the telescopes, had a good time with them. Bounced off the space station a couple times. I like to run marathons. My beautiful wife, KI4YDS, and my brother, KQ4CA, and he's a new ham. So we're Elmering him and getting him going. So that's it for me. Minute and a half.
All right, excellent. All right, do we have a volunteer number 2? And while volunteer number 2 is raising their hand, think about volunteer 3, and we'll keep the microphone going. Who wants to be volunteer number 2? Look at the brave individuals. Paul is saying he wants to go. Okay. All right. We got number 3 up in the back corner, and maybe we got number 3 here and 4 there. Can just bob a little along. I don't know. Here you go, Paul.
Well, I started wanting to take things apart when I was maybe about 6 years old. My father told all his friends that his son had a bad case of take-apartitis. I didn't do very well at school. Didn't do very well in high school. Went to work for a electrician, learned a lot about commercial electricity, and I learned a few new words. Got out of the Navy. Well, actually, I went into the Navy. Went to ET school, 38-week school, and was trained on electronics, which I loved. Got out of the Navy, got married, went to work for Kodak. They promised me a job in a ET shop. I ended up being an electrician's apprentice, which would have been a 6-year program, but would have been a 4-year program, but it would have taken 6 years or more because I just was not in time to get into the plan. I left them after 8 months. That would have been a cradle to grave job. My father worked there for 38 years. So I quit them, looked in the newspaper, found a job at Western Union, was there for 18 and a half years. Teletypes, voice circuits, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, Western Union dried up and blew away. I was the second last technician, field service technician in Rochester. One of my friends who had left earlier found me another job at a place called ACC Long Distance. That was about 5 years of kind of bad health. Ended up, guy I worked with there gave me told me I should go talk to the guy he was working for, Joe Nunn. And apparently he had told Joe enough about my abilities that Joe just talked to me for a couple of minutes and say, can you start Monday? Real good interview. I worked there for several years, and he sold out to another fellow by the name of Charlie, whose work ethic is quite a bit different. He says, I don't care what you do, just so long as you get your job done. And I'm almost done here. So I was there for about 20 years and retired from there. Oh, come on now. Retired from there, moved down next door to my daughter, and that was 10 years ago. Ah, the eclipse. Might have to wake up.
Here. While we're going through it, we have a temporary problem. Who's number 3? Okay. Because some people might not want to do it.
Well, thank you. But you're back. Okay. All right. Well, I'm Dave, W4SAR. Got my first license back in 1992 when I was living in New Jersey. My call sign then was N2MLU. And before I got into amateur radio, I actually did a little bit of CBing. Believe it or not, in New Jersey, they had a net going on, a mobile net going on CB on all the interstates and all the highways there to look out for all the traffic jams and work your way around them. So it was actually a net that every 20 minutes it would come up, warn you what was bad and what you needed to go around, and it worked pretty well. But I was at a living history reenactment where people were having trouble finding the camp. The sponsor put wrong directions down. One fellow found it right away, and I says, "How'd you do that?" I says, "Well, I'm an amateur radio operator. I just called up the local repeater and asked the local person to give me directions to this site, and there I was." So I looked into it, and I went and got my license. And the local club there, this was Morris County, New Jersey, was into emergency communications. So that's where I got tied into that. A few years later, I wound up moving down here to Orange County, North Carolina. Found the local repeater, and I asked on there, "Hey, anybody here know of a local club here in Orange County?" KZ1X. Steve Jackson responded. He was the founder of this club, and this is 3 months after the founding of the club. So Karen and I got hooked up on that. And he must have heard his name. That's Steve right there. All right. Well, you asked about my call sign W4SAR. I got into emergency communications, but also I was a volunteer with a search and rescue team for a while. And when the vanity call sign system came into place, I found that lo and behold, W4SAR, search and rescue, was available. So I jumped on that, and that's been my call sign ever since. And I enjoy the emergency communications. I enjoy field day, both for the competitive aspect of that, for it's practice for when something happens and we need to be communicating efficiently with a whole lot of other people. So, and I'm glad I'm a part of it. So Steve, I was just telling him how you were the first ham I spoke to when I moved down here to Orange County. No. Yeah. No. Well, we can take him as number. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dave, NA4VY. Obviously, there's a connection to the Navy, but I'll get to that. In the 1960s, I got my license. I was like 16 years old. I was attracted to radio stuff because there was a war surplus store about 3 miles away, Radio Row, which had about there was 2 blocks of all the stuff you could ever think of from World War II. And I like to bring all that junk home. My mother was never happy with all of it, but it was really cool stuff. So anyway, in 1966, I was eligible for the draft, and I decided to join the Navy to avoid the Army. And I was selected originally to be a nuclear reactor operator. Turns out I went to school to do all that, but submarines and I didn't work out too well. So they reassigned me and I became an electronics technician on a ship. And I got to fix single sideband radios, which was the dream job, my best job I've ever had. And then I got out of the Navy and went back to school, got a EE degree, worked for Underwriters Laboratories, became a professional engineer, all that sort of stuff. And I always wanted to find that radio that I worked on when I was in the Navy, and I found one. It is 6 feet high, weighs 500 pounds and 500 watts, and it is in my basement. And every so often you can hear me on 10 meters. I crank it up, but everybody knows who I am because they hear the blower going, and it sounds like a shop vac. So I've always loved boat anchors. I'm a sucker for them, but I need to get rid of them. Time to move on.
Hello, I'm Boyd Hudson, KO4GJO. Back in the 60s, I was in the CB in my high school years and into college. Then cell phones came along, and in addition to college studies, I've worked as a captain with Wells Fargo Guard Service, worked as a corrections officer, came down to North Carolina from New Jersey to go to nursing school, ended up switching to respiratory therapy, and worked at Duke for 28 years in respiratory therapy, and finally retired from that. I retired about the same time that COVID hit. So I was looking around for something to do to occupy my time, and CB isn't anymore what it used to be back in New Jersey when you had all the highway nets going on. So I started looking at ham radio, and went and found out some information about OCRA and joined the club and got my technician's license, and so off to the races. It's like a Barbie doll without accessories. So I managed to put together a station and did a show and tell about that, and made an air launcher, and to get a lineup over some high trees, and made a video about that. And so I'm still working on some more videos to come as I continue to expand my station. And that about wraps it up.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pat Connolly, KO4QLU. I've had 3 careers in my life. My first one was a career in the Marine Corps, served 2 years in Vietnam. Got 1 Purple Heart for my participation there. After my time in the Marine Corps was finished, I had a career in addiction medicine as a clinician. Eventually became the narcotic treatment program coordinator for the state of North Carolina. After I got out of the addictions field, I became a study coordinator in Duke Department of Psychiatry, dealing with geriatric depression. Ham radio, I was first exposed to amateur radio when I was, not when I was, but 65 years ago. A friend of my father's, K4KJK, took me to his radio room, cut everything on, and I was fascinated. He gave me a key to learn the code and practice. And when you're 10 years old, that doesn't stick with you too long. I used to do a lot of photography and shooting sports, but my mobility put a kibosh on most of that. So I decided amateur radio would be great for somebody that doesn't have a lot of mobility. I bought a handy talkie before I got my first license. I bought a FTDX 10 before I got my general license to use the damn thing. I got these things to make sure I didn't quit. And so after that, there was only 1 license left to get, and that was this volunteer examiner. So I do that as a way of giving back to the hobby now. That's enough for public consumption.
That's what I get for saying, pass it on back. Well, how do you want me? All right, I'm comfortable. I'm Fred. I'm Brad KN4 QBZ, and I'll try to keep this to 3 minutes, which for me will be a challenge. But we moved here from San Francisco, and people kind of look at me and say, "Why would you ever come here?" And my answer is, "You don't know what you got." This is a great place to be, and we're very happy to be here. But we moved here in 2011, and you probably remember September of 2001. I also remember September of 2018 when Florence came ashore as a Category 1, by the way, when it hit the Outer Banks and it came ashore as a tropical storm. And it stayed for 5 days and dumped several trillion gallons of water on the state of North Carolina. Well, I had already volunteered with CERT, and I was working in the Chatham EOC, answering telephones and trying to help people deal with the storm, and also setting up a couple of shelters. And so I thought, well, that's good service, and it's a good thing to do. Kept seeing this guy walking around on the back, and I couldn't quite figure it out. It looked kind of like Santa Claus. Anybody want to guess who that was? Nick. Yeah. Nick Sudlick. Nick Sudlick suddenly became very important because we lost all cell phones, all 3 carriers. We lost 911, 911. Okay. And I realized if you're going to live here, you better prepare to live here. Okay. There is a risk. And so that got me into ham radio, thanks to Nick, and continue to push ahead. And I do volunteer with the Chatham Oxcom group, and we work with the EOC. It's been a great relationship with OCRA. I was looking at the table. I think there's still 6 or 7 badges there that are Chatham. And I'm happy to see Keith with us tonight and new in Chatham. But we're trying to get the same thing going here in Orange. Same kind of an idea. And so working with Bruce and my official title, by the way, is Sherpa. So if you know what Sherpa means, I'm to help the boss be successful and trying to get something set up in Orange County. And in part, it's because I believe in reciprocity. When there's a storm, 30 seconds. When there's a storm, when the tornado comes through and puts a tree on my house, I need you to come help me. And the deal is, I'll come help you. And so we've got this relationship working, and Dan Edelman and Bob have volunteered a couple of times on deployments in Chatham, and I think have had a good time. I'll let him to tell you about that. But yeah, I recommend it too. So we're looking at how do we partner. And by the way, you guys have the repeaters. We have the towers. That's my 30 minutes.
Thank you, Fred. My name's Bob Cook. I'm a W4FK. I got in a little bit later than a lot of the guys to ham radio. Was probably in my late 30s, and I got a scanner. And one day I found 2 meters. I had no idea what it was, but these guys were meeting a certain time, and everybody would have their say, and they'd talk about topics. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And I found out about it and went down to Radio Shack and where I ham worked, and put the technician class book in my hand, and the rest is history. Got Tech, then Tech Plus, which gave me 10 meters, then General, and once they dropped the code down to 5, just copy, I got my extra, and that's how I'm a 1x2 call. Anyway, I'm from South Florida, been up here about 2.5 years. Nice not to have to worry about every storm coming out of the Caribbean, you know, constantly watching the TV. Oh, we got to put the shutters up or not. So stuff like that is in the past. Nice to get a season change where it's not just hot and then less hot part of the year. Actually gets cold up here for me. Me and my wife, we enjoy run fairs, festivals, stuff like that. GalaxyCon's a big one. We like to make costumes. I like to make weird stuff like this and kind of sci-fi looking stuff like that. A little bit of a Star Wars look to it. We enjoy stuff like that. So get that in timeout. All right. Who's next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Ferrer, KY4OU. I grew up on a small little island off the coast of Long Island in New York. I was licensed, but I guess before that, I probably followed in Paul's footsteps where I was taking things apart at an early age. So for my 5th birthday, my dad got me a socket set from Craftsman and an old broken lawnmower from the dump, and I just took it all apart and ended up having to haul all the parts away. But I think from when I could walk, I was plugging extension cords in and connecting them together and running them around the house, driving my mom crazy. But I got licensed in 1987. My call was N2JFP. And by the time I turned 18, I had a VHF Marine Band radio, CB, cell phone, and amateur radio in my little Horizon car. So, which was kind of funny because all my friends just thought I was a complete nerd, which I was. So I went to college and tech school for photography. I've been a professional photographer my whole life. Went in and became a paramedic, EMT paramedic, did that for many years. Went and got my AMP from the FAA, my airframe and power plant. Did that for a while and ended up in IT and audiovisual. So now I get to design multi-million-dollar AV systems for the UNC campus. So that's a lot of fun. But that's about it. I've had quite a diverse career path, but I think it's all kind of come together. So now I work in the School of Medicine. So having been an EMT paramedic, I get to understand all the medical jargon when the faculty and staff and med students are talking medical stuff. And I got the electronics and side, so it all paired well together. So, but anyway, that's what I got.
Hello, my name's Kent Overby. You can tell by the name there. It's KQ4PES. I'm from Person County, a little community up that way we call Plum Nelly. It's Plum out the county, Nelly out the state. But I've had 3 careers. I was a police officer for 10 years, still in the fire service since 1973. I've been a ham now for about 4 weeks. And yeah, I was a plumber for 52 years. My wife said if I don't stop plumbing when I die, somebody gonna have to drag me out from under a house. So I quit. I have retired 4 times. I'm just not smart enough to stay home. So now I teach plumbing at community college in Roxborough. And I've led a very sheltered life. So that's about it for me.
Well, I'm not glad to know a plumber now. I know who to call. Yeah, I got a couple of problems here. I'm John. I'm John Green, KX4P, and I don't know how to squeeze it into the 5 minutes I'm allowed or whatever it is, but I'll do the best I can. I grew up in Homewood, Alabama, part of Birmingham, Alabama, back in the late 40s and 50s, and in high school. The only thing I was interested in all was, other than girls maybe, was playing trumpet, jazz trumpet. And I was real quickly the solo trumpet player for a high school band of 100 people. And so, yeah, I was on cloud 9. But when it came time to go to college, I realized maybe I wasn't good enough to really make a career of it. Come to find out, I probably wasn't. I'd like to think I was better than I was. But the fellow that played, I got to play solo trumpet, but the other guy next to me playing second chair, he was interested in ham radio, and he got me interested in ham radio. And so I started out with a number of projects. One of them was to get a library book and wind an electromagnet. And my grandfather gave me the wire. My dad gave me the bolt and a nut and the washers, and I wound it, and I had to buy my own battery for 95 cents. And so I cut grass and all that. I bought a battery, hooked it up. The battery sparked to start with, but soon it quit sparking. And so I had to buy another battery, and I thought, well, I didn't wind it like the book showed. I wound it clockwise with 200 turns, and so I unwound it and wound it back with 200 turns counterclockwise, bought another battery, and it sparked for a minute, and then it went dead. And then I found out 2 weeks later, my buddy played second chair trumpet, said you have to use insulated wire. And I didn't know that. The next project was I built a little one-tube radio, and I went down to the radio shop and bought the tube for $1.50 and built it, hooked it up with a battery, and it went off like a flash bulb. And I think I went through buying 3 or 4 tubes from the guy for $1.50 each until he finally just fixed my radio for me, showed me what I did wrong. And then he hired me to sweep the floor in the radio and TV shop. And I got $5 every Saturday for working for him. And that got me into electrical engineering. I got a ham license when I was about 16, whatever that was, but 1956. And when it came time to go to college, I thought I won't major in music, but I will. I've still got 30 seconds. Yeah. Anyway, I ended up with an engineering career. I did well with that. I decided I really wanted to know more about what I believed as a Christian. So I went to seminary for 6 or 7 years, learned the Greek history, all that. And I became pastor of a number of churches through the years, bivocationally. So I worked as an engineer, worked as a pastor all that time. And now I've been here in Chapel Hill area for about 10 years and met some people that help me restore radios, understand how they work. If I need the parts, I know who to call. Everybody knows who to call. And it made some of the greatest friends. Some of the guys I grew up with in high school, we get on every Sunday night for an hour and we talk. There's 5 of us, and others join us through the years. But yeah, we have a wonderful companionship in ham radio. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm new to the group. I'm new to the area. My story is also going to be hard to cram into 3 minutes, but I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. My father was an FBI agent, so he was out chasing mobsters, and I was, home trying to hear stations on an AM radio as far away as I could hear at night. So I asked my dad, my parents, for a shortwave listening radio. They didn't know any better, and they got me a ham radio for Christmas. And I plugged it in and I hooked up an antenna and heard all these people talking. And I was like, what is this? I have no idea. So I got my license in 1973. And I also did phone patches for Vietnam. In those days, that was a lot of fun. It was very fulfilling. I'm into CW and contesting now, like Fred. I served in the Navy for 13 years in submarines, did a lot of interesting things that I can't tell you about. I can tell you that we went to the North Pole and surfaced and played football at the North Pole. And we also had a crew member dress up as Santa Claus, took pictures with everybody so that we could tell all the kids that we visited Santa Claus on his off season and got some stuff for them. That I loved being in submarines actually, but I was never home. Most years I was gone about, 240 to 300 days out of the year. And that was hard to, I had a wife and she was, very independent. She is, but, I said, I got to do something else. So I got out of the Navy. I went to grad school. I went to work for Hewlett Packard in Santa Rosa, California. Worked on gallium arsenide, indium phosphide transistors. A lot of fun, a lot of interesting stuff. But like Fred, when it's time to retire, it's time to go. I also came out here. My wife's from Maryland, so I promised her long ago that when it came time to retire and move somewhere, for the end state, that she got to pick, because I had kind of dragged her all over the place in the Navy, and she's not a big fan of California, living there, but she's a trooper, so put up with it. I love my job, but you can say a lot about California in other settings. But I changed my call sign when I got here. I had a K6 BSG call sign in California. For contesting and things like that, I like to keep in the area that I'm in. I know people keep their call signs, and I understand that. And if you're on UHF, VHF, it doesn't really matter. But I get somewhat annoyed when I hear a call sign that I think is maybe rare or far away, and I find out, they're in the next county over. So that's anyway, that's enough of that. Quickly on hobbies, besides contesting and CW, I like to cycle. Try to stay in shape that way. I'm trying to get my golf game back together. I moved out here. They lost my clubs in the move, and I've just now got them restored. So I haven't played in 3 or 4 years. So I imagine it's going to be very interesting when I finally get out there. But that's the short story. I'll be happy to tell more later, but
Hey, everybody. My name is Charlie. I'm KD4UCZ. So I got hooked on radio in about 1968 when my parents bought me a Sears Wayfarer shortwave radio. And I spent nights just like tuning in the world, man. It opened up a whole new world. So they saw I was addicted. So in 1970, they got me a realistic DX150A, which I still have. It still works, which is kind of cool. So I also bought a Chevelle, an SS with a 396 in it. And after my first speeding ticket, I thought maybe it a good idea to put a scanner in it and a CB radio because I was also addicted to speed, the driving kind, not the narcotic kind. So that was very helpful because I knew what the New Jersey State Troopers were, especially on the turnpike. So 74, I joined the Air Force. The Air Force did a bait and switch. If anybody was ever in the military, they know what that is. They tell you you're going to do one thing and then you're going to do something else. So I scored really high on a test. So they said, you're going to be a communications analyst. So for 6 years, I traveled around the world, did a lot of things I can't talk about, but I spent a lot of nights with an R390 and an elephant cage antenna. So I would like be able to listen to anything, around the world, which was really cool. And how the guys like point this antenna where I wanted to go, which I saw a couple 390s Saturday and broke some people's hearts because they're like $300. I told them, I took sledgehammers to about 50 of these ones because we had to get out of Dodge. So they had little tears in their eyes when I told them that. So about 20 years ago, I got my technician's license. I kind of started out in electronics, doing relay logic, went to mini computers, did LAN technology, telecommunications with Nortel, MCI, cybersecurity, a couple defense contractors, and now I got my own gig going on where I just do some consulting. 4 years ago, got my general. Last year, I got my advanced. I got back into general because I found FT8 because I had a requirement for low power to send the signal around the world. And I said, hey, it's FT8. This is like really cool. That didn't go anywhere. So I said, maybe I'll just go back to amateur radio, get a general license and play with FT8. And that's what I did. Hobbies outside of this, I bought a bass tractor a year ago. So I bass fish now. Now the weather's nice, probably one day a week if I can get out on the lakes. I'm playing around with a Mesh-tastic. If anybody saw the YouTube videos, very low speed LoRa sensors, which are really cool. And they're about $20 and people are getting like 100-mile line of sight with this. So I'm playing with that a little bit that's week. And that's it for me. 8 years.
Hey, I'm Karen, KD4YJZ. I got into ham radio because I wanted to be involved in the same hobby that my husband was in. He's sitting. I enjoy being part of emergency services, and I just like talking to people, and that's my story.
Hi, I'm Steve, KZ1X. So in the 70s, I decided I'd take my parents up on letting me play with electronic stuff at the house. And then back in those days, there wasn't any cable TV, so I tore up all the TVs in the neighborhood because I really didn't know what I was doing. And then somebody complained, and then the FCC sent me a letter, and at the end of the letter, it said, "We are enclosing some pamphlets on amateur radio and in which you may become interested." I have that letter. It's framed now. So the FCC told me to do this, and so here we are. Then Dad realized, hey, he had an uncle when he was a kid now I know what his uncle's call. I didn't at the time. It's W2LLO. And he had used to visit his uncle and he thought it was the coolest thing. And now his son wants to get involved in this stuff. And he goes, there's a big radio club in Connecticut. You should get a hold of those people. And so I wrote them a letter and they said, yeah, there's a guy nearby in New Jersey where I grew up and he can help you out. And so that was Clark, W-A-2-U-N-N. And he told me to go to the local radio club and go to the novice class. And this was, at this point, I was 17. I had a car and I was working in an electronics shop, so I had money to have a car anyway. And so I ditched my girlfriend at the time and went to the novice class. She wasn't very happy about that. She still isn't, actually, now that I think of it. And so, but novice in 78, upgraded several times, general advanced, got my extra in 83, moved to Massachusetts, got the one call there, only thing the government ever gave me that was worthwhile. And then I said, I can't take New England weather anymore. By that time I got married and my wife got her license and we left New England, moved here in 1990, and it's been an interesting journey ever since. I never met Dave and to MLU when we lived in New Jersey, 2 or 3 miles apart. It's the weirdest thing. So anyway, but here he is. Fine. We made up for it. One of the guys that I met down here was the manager of the Radio Shack in Chapel Hill, and he says, you know, there really ought to be a club in Orange County. And here we are 31 years later. So anyway, that's the long and short story. There's plenty of other details.
All right, you want to go or you want to do it next time? Is everybody else gone tonight? Okay, why don't we move to Zoom? Oh, we could do us? Okay. Yeah, we'll do us. Which one of you wants to go first? Okay, Lori can go. Let me get the.
I get to time myself. This is fun. No. Lori, N1YXU. I grew up as an Air Force dependent and traveled quite a bit with my dad. He was in the ministry in the Air Force. And my story in getting into amateur radio is maybe a little bit different. I promise to make this pretty brief. Bruce and I lived in upstate New York in the mid-90s, and we moved to Massachusetts. And we moved from a townhouse to a standalone house. That meant that Bruce had the opportunity to hide some antennas out in the trees, which he did. And he wanted to get back into the hobby. So I was not licensed at that time, and Bruce was talking about this crazy thing called a ham radio contest. I didn't really understand, but I listened enough so that I put together an Excel file. This was way before at least Bruce knew that there was software, you know, for logging. So I knew Excel pretty well. I put together an Excel file that allowed the person who logged to put in a call sign, and then it would prompt to say whether it was a duplicate. Pretty cool, right? I mean, it was really basic. The plan turned out to be bad, but the plan was that I was going to be the logger and Bruce was going to make his contacts, tell me the call sign, tell me the exchange, and I was going to plug it into the spreadsheet and we were going to work as a pair. By the time he told me one contact and I was plugging stuff in, you guys know this when you're at field day, it takes a while. He was, 3 or 4 down the list. He got frustrated. I said, this is not working. So he ended up doing the logging and the running. When I was in college, I was a language major. And to me, CW, which is what he was using, is a language. So I decided I'm going to learn this crazy language. And we went to HRO and we bought cassette tapes. This tells you how long ago it was. And I listened to the cassette tapes on my way into work and home. I learned the code. I took the test, and I used to operate CW quite a bit. One of the memorable CW QSOs that I had I was a French major, was a French QSO with a guy in France. And I spoke French in CW because I had to spell every word out using letters. So that was kind of cool. And I'm done.
Okay, I need two of those periods. I'm the oldest 19-year-old here, I'm sure. I was born in 1941, and my father got a ham license in 1930, so the house was full of components. And my grandfather got a license, well, actually, he was on the air, but didn't have a license in 1914. So I cut my teeth quite literally on old radio components, and I've been doing it ever since. I had a mixed career in elementary school. I learned the code at about 8. I didn't have anybody to talk to really, so kind of let that go. But I did waste the 5th grade trying to make early transistors work with mixed success. But went on and hammed a lot with Dad. Many of our family friends were hams and people involved in electronics. So I wasn't very motivated to get a license. I didn't really need it. But my friends started getting them in high school, so I had to. And at 16 in 1957, I finally got it. And then I got into computers. And early days, I helped a friend build a computer with relays, and it would actually add. I don't remember if it multiplied, but it would add small numbers and make clacking sounds. So he did well in the science fair. Then eventually I went away to school and got involved in things like high-speed photography. You probably heard of Harold Edgerton. And that was fun and adventurous, and got into geophysics with, I don't know, probably you never read that stuff, but if you did, you'd see Frank Press and Gene Simmons. That was the early days of continental drift and seafloor spreading. And I built lots of neat instruments and took them to sea, and eventually went to grad school and got a degree called ocean engineering. And that's kind of a unique degree because it means absolutely nothing. You can say you're an engineer, but nobody knows what you really did. So I studied corrosion and materials and oceanography and all that sort of stuff, and suffered about 10 years in university research, doing other people's work for them and not getting paid very well. And one of my friends bailed me out and said, "We need you at Exxon." And lo and behold, then I traveled around the world and I instrumented every kind of oil rig and ship you can think of, except submarines, no submarines. And I always felt very rewarded to get, really never have a career, but get other people to pay for all my fun and hobbies and vacations and stuff. And I managed to bail out at 55 and moved back to Hillsborough. We're from Winston-Salem, but for a couple of reasons, we wanted to be up around this area, and worked a couple of years at Ericsson, building cell phones and testing them and stuff like that. And then just kind of deteriorated into ham radio and a little bit of broadcasting, a lot of broadcast, actually a good bit of broadcast engineering, and really disliked computers. I started disliking them with the relays and continued that tradition. So now I use them when I have to. I do CW a lot. I can talk, as you can see, but lots of CW, a tiny bit of contesting, but mostly making things work. Dad said, talking to people is your reward for making your radio work. So that's never been the main thing. I think that's most of it, Bruce. Did I make it?
Okay, I'm going to turn the camera over to Lori here, and I'm going to sit down here. I'm going to take a slightly different, can you reach it? I'm going to take a slightly different tact here. You already heard how my entry, what's going on? Okay, you already heard my entry into contesting. Until then, it really wasn't very active in ham radio. We moved around a lot. The kids were growing up, it was go to the softball game, go to the, whatever, the baton thing in the parade where one of the daughters is twirling batons. But I got into contesting when we lived in Massachusetts. Then we moved to Texas. And in Texas, I joined the NARS Radio Club and TDXS, Texas DX Society. And getting into, also, we made sure we bought property where I could put up towers. If anybody's been out to my house, our house now, you know, we've got 4 towers in the yard and a lot fewer antennas than we had before I turned 70. I took down more than I have because I didn't want to climb towers anymore. But when we were in Houston, I got into contesting. And the club there had a station in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. How many people have been thrown out of a country? Okay, we've got 2 people in the group and I'm the 3rd. So every year we would go to Nuevo Laredo and operate ARRL DX CW. We'd also operate ARRL DX sideband. The license that we got was always in my name. And the call sign was 6 Delta 2 YFM. And every year we would win, at least for Mexico, and we'd come in usually top 5 for the area. Then the Mexican ham started complaining to the FMRE, which at that time was kind of like the Mexican FCC and ARRL put together. And we just ignored them. We just kept operating and operating until one time I got this letter in the mail after we had been there. It was a very polite letter, somewhat. It was in Spanish, so I had to have one of my friends translate it for me. But the short story is they really would thank me if I would never again come into Mexico. And if I did, I would not be authorized to get a Mexican license, and I will never be allowed to operate ham radio in Mexico again. And that wasn't bad enough. There were 2 friends of mine, one in Mexico City and one in Houston. And it may have changed now, but the reciprocal licensing at that time, if you were Mexican and you came to the States, you just use your XE whatever /W3. If you're from the States and you go to Mexico, you have to have friends in Mexico City so you can bribe all the officials and pay your $600 or $700 for your 2-week license. All right, so that's why it was in my name. You know, we all got together and did that. Both of the people, the person in Houston and his relative in Mexico City, also lost their licenses forever. So not only did I get thrown out of a country, 2 of my friends no longer can have ham radio licenses. So contesting can be dangerous. Okay. All right, now we go to Zoom. And we're going to spotlight the folks on Zoom, and we can shut the room camera down, which we've done. And yeah, if somebody would want to raise their hand, they can go first. And okay, we've got 3 people are going to talk at the same time. Okay, let's go alphabetically. We've got Charles, Dan, and Jose. We'll go to Charles first, then Dan, then Jose. We'll be, yeah. And again, can you guys hear the timer?
Yeah, I can hear the timer. Can you hear me?
Okay, so 2.5 minutes, it goes off.
Okay, thank you. We starting now?
Go for it.
Okay, can you hear me? Well, I am Charles McComas. I'm KY4HU, and I started kind of late. I got my got my license, general license in I think 2018 and 2023. I think I went for extra, excuse me. I started out in 1973 in a little dinky little volunteer fire department in Hamlin, West Virginia, which means if you knew where Hamlin was at, you were definitely lost. Did that, was one of the first EMTs licensed in the whole darn state. Went to the paramedic program. Went through one of the first paramedic programs, and did EMS, paramedic work, did helicopter air rescue, whole bunches of fun things. And somewhere along that line, I actually had time to get a BA in political science. And also I ended up in the West Virginia Army National Guard, and with the 2nd Battalion 19th Special Forces Unit, where I went through the old 300F1 training back in the day, which is now the 18 Delta Special Forces Medic training, and had a good time with that. I had an exceptionally good time because we got mobilized and deployed to the Afghanistan in the 01 and 02 time period. And it was a career milestone to go out and take the bad stuff to the bad guys. And went out with some good people, worked with some great people over in Afghanistan, and a good time with Ebal. So I came back 90, somewhere around 92. I ended up moving down here in North Carolina after I got off active duty off of another time. I was a commissioned officer at that time, and actually went through the tank training at and anybody can tell you, if you're an officer and your platoon fails to qualify on tank gunnery, your Army career is over. And that's kind of what happened to me. So let's see what else I got here. I enjoyed the choir singing and things like that. And I especially enjoyed the guy up there. I think Kent, he actually came by my house and sang for my mom and my wife on Valentine's Day, which is kind of fun. So that's it all, and I'll end it right there.
Okay, thank you, Charles. If you could spotlight Dan, he's the next alphabetical one to go. There you go.
My name is Dan, KR4UB, and where did this start? For me, a 7-year-old kid hearing shortwave radio from faraway places like Newfoundland, Gander, Idlewild. My older brother was flying by the age of 14 and had bought a helicopter Skyrider Marine radio to listen and learn radio procedures. I got my ham license in 1963 and also obtained a second-class general radio telephone license. That background in the Vietnam War set the remainder of the path. I enlisted in Navy Reserve after high school, just before starting at NC State. That time, Navy enlistees with a ham radio license were put on a fast path to radioman, and I advanced up to second-class radioman while in the reserve. The Navy encouraged me to apply for OCS, was accepted, was commissioned upon graduation from NC State with a AA degree, and awaiting orders to active duty. Given the Cold War in Vietnam, the Navy decided it needed a new class of ships to protect carrier task forces. I received orders to one of 4 destroyers that were converted to become ships with guided missiles, anti-submarine warfare, other capabilities can't really talk about, avionics, supplying aircraft navigation, electronics warfare, and with the new 3D air search radar that was so advanced, it is still in use today. My job was the electronics maintenance and electronics warfare officer. With new equipment like this, reliability problem and spare parts problems was a real challenge. So that involved lots of communications back to Naval Electronics Systems Command in Washington. And it was decades later, I learned that the person at the other end, Navalex, a ham, heavily involved in this endeavor was Nick England. My second tour of duty was to a Pacific Fleet Auxiliary Ship Command, and there's sort of the reverse situation. Lots of old ships with failing electronics, and that job required what hams do best. Lots of scrounging, borrow from the Navy boneyards, and trying to get these ships still able to do their job with no real money to support the overhaul. I found it amazing the number of hams I've met that have been involved in very interesting work. By the way, those 4 converted destroyers turned out to be the prototypes for today's Arleigh Burke class destroyers, 73 of which have been built to date, and those are the ships taking out the drones, missiles, and piracy boats protecting shipping in the Middle East you hear about today. 1971, I came back for a career at IBM Research Triangle Park as an engineer in engineering management and the development of telecommunications products.
Thank you, Dan, very much. Okay, if we can move over to Jose. There he is.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jose, Kilo Delta 4 Juliet Whiskey Foxtrot. I started young when I was with the CBs. I started interested in emergency management.
Jose, wait a minute. Okay, we
Now?
got you. Go ahead. Sorry,
Okay.
go ahead. We'll give you an
Mr.
extra 10 seconds.
There we go. So I started with CBs from the early age in Puerto Rico, get involved with emergency management and support with civil defense, hurricanes, aviation with the Civil Air Patrol. And then I decided to join the military after one semester of university, trying to get physics degree, but everybody was not interested in that. So I decided to join the military. During the military, I got different assignments, and I was assigned basically as a dual MOS, one of the few people that got a dual MOS. So every time I get my orders, basically I have to call the DA and tell him where you really want me to go. So I was a military police investigator. I also was an armament, a gunsmith. I decided to still continue helping the signal battalion. So I always sneak into their trucks and use the satellites and use all the radios. I got a ham radio. Currently, I'm still working with the Civil Air Patrol. I'm one of the communication unit leaders for the North Carolina Wind, also mission observer. So that means I fly on the right side of the Cessnas. A student pilot forever. Every time I'm trying to do my solos or my check rides, something happens. So obviously, God is telling me not to get my license yet. I've been to Desert Storm, Desert Shoe, Korea, Panama, different deployments, doing the best I can as an investigator. And then after I left Fort Bragg, I went to Chapel Hill Police Department, Wake County Sheriff's Office. I became a CCBI agent, which is basically crime scene investigator. And then decided to get out of that way, 18 years of enforcement. So now I'm doing loss prevention in warehouses, active in Oxcom, active on QRP, you name it, digital, satellites, that's my goal. Like you can see behind me, also deal with the state and federal messaging stations. So I have to maintain and all the messages to all the agencies go back and forth. So that's basically for me, and always willing to learn, willing to help, and willing to travel. Back to you.
All right, Jose, very good. Thank you very much. If we could jump out and see, okay, who would like to go next? Okay, we got two hands going up. We can go alphabetical again. We'll go Bill, then we'll go Doug. Okay, Bill, Lori will get you spotlighted. Oh, Bill, you got to unmute. There you go.
Okay.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Bill. My call letters are November 8 Bravo Radio. I got my first ham license 67 years ago when I was 14. And now that gives you access to extra information that you don't need to know. But the fact of the matter is I was a novice for a year, and then I worked my way into general, and then after a few years I became an extra class and was really able to get with the BX parts, the bands and that type of thing. And that was I thought was a general piece of real progress. During my late teen years, I did a lot of DXing with very simple equipment at my parents' house. And when I graduated from high school, I applied to college at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and I moved away from home and was in Oxford. But I came home on weekends to do ham radio, and there was another reason I came home. I can't remember what it was, but its call letters were PATTI, and that's my wife's name. And we used to get together, and then I'd take the bus back on Sunday night. And I finished my master's degree at Miami, and we decided that it would be a good idea for me to go ahead and get another advanced degree so I could teach college, and that I had aspired to do for a long time. And Patty was on my side and really helped support me. We came to Chapel Hill. And that was the beginning of a lot of good amateur radio. I had a huge a dipole up high for the first time ever down on the housing complex that we lived, and nobody said anything about it. And it was really a good experience. Lots of DXing, worked lots of countries. When we finished my degree at UNC, I got my PhD in genetics at UNC. We moved first of all to the University of Rhode Island, and that was a wonderful DX experience too. I had a tower at the house, and we managed to work a lot of countries. It's been a great hobby. I'm still interested in it. I'm not pleased with the isolation that we have. We're living in a neighborhood where antennas are no-no, but I'm in the process of trying to get that fixed. So in spite of all my procrastination, hopefully that'll happen. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, let's go over to Doug.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Hang on a minute. We got to get you,
sorry.
spotlight on you and start the timer. And you got a few extra seconds to organize your thoughts. Okay. Thoughts are organized. Timer's going. All yours.
Not sure how organized. I'm Doug K5ETS. I first got into radio when I was around 5. My mom used to listen to shortwave radio, so I started listening to it, and then I at some point learned CW because I wanted to listen to the ship-to-shore communications, and so I knew I could copy CW pretty well for a few years, and then eventually I met somebody who was a ham. They said, "Well, you might as well get your ham license since you know CW," and so that's how I got into amateur radio. I'm still more of a listener. I listen to radio stations all around the world on the internet from a variety of different countries. I still listen to a lot of shortwave. I work in software infrastructure at UNC, and just to show, I'm a terrible engineer, but I wanted to show you my real simple setup. Let's see that you can, because he said it could be show and tell. What Bruce had mentioned. So this is my very simple setup. I live in a condo. There's the radio, and then you probably can't see them. There's some TR switches behind it so that I can receive simultaneously with my SDR. So it's a very tiny, the radio is the size of a book. The SDR is even the size of a cigarette pack, old school cigarette pack. And so it's kind of cool. You can work the world with a very simple setup. And I have 9 antennas back there, even though I live in the condo. So, and a lot of them are monobanders. So I work as best I can. That's basically it for me, I think.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Doug. Okay. Who else we have that would like to, okay, there's Tim and JR. Okay, if we go, oh, Ken. Okay, Ken wins the alphabet this time. Let's go. We got to move the thing here. Okay, there we go. All right, you're up, Ken.
All right, I'm Ken, KO4DHJ. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Early life was, I was involved in civil defense with my parents and auxiliary police and Civil Air Patrol. I graduated from Penn Technical Institute with an associate's degree in electronics technology. I enjoyed the first radio that my parents bought me for Christmas one year. It was a Olson 717 5 crystal CB, and had a little ground plane antenna that we hung on a pole beside the fence, and I used to really enjoy that thing. But I graduated from Penn Tech and took a job with NCR Corporation. Was with them for 33 years. And worked with large mainframe computers, the Century 100, 200, 300, and 350 configuration, multi-systems, multi-programming systems. And I've lived started out in Pennsylvania and moved to Dayton, Ohio, then Richmond, Virginia, then Rancho Bernardo, California, back to Richmond, Virginia, back to Dayton, Ohio, then to Clemson, South Carolina, back to Dayton, Ohio, then to Atlanta, Georgia, and then to here. And after 9 moves and 33 years with NCR, I decided that it was enough. And I ended up, they wanted me to move again And I just decided that 9 moves was enough, and I decided to retire early. And during that time, I spent quite a bit of time working with a lot, did some teaching for about 7 years, worked with some support organizations, did some middle management. And also in one of my groups, we set up the parameters for the AWACS planes in a program called Support Sentinel, where their computers needed to have some redundancy if there was a problem with the computer. And if it decided to have an it needed to report that information. After leaving NCR, I spent 14 years at Duke in transportation. And then several years after that, COVID hit, and I decided to use that time during the COVID lockdown to become a ham that I'd always wanted to do. And that's how I became KO4DHJ. Here I am. Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to JR. I can see him. There he is. Okay, wait till we get your spot. There you go, JR. You are now live and on screen. Go for it.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm JR. I got started. Well, now I'm in for JKR, but I got started with the interest back in the '60s when I was a youngster. I'd gotten um, a feel of things by what I had discovered at the time. I had grown up, born and raised in Raleigh, and grown up in the Raleigh area, and I had found out about it and found my way to a Roz Fest, and this was when they had it. In the parking deck of Crabtree Valley Mall area, and it was really outstanding, fascinating then, and because you could go out there and carry a list of things of what you wanted to build. In electronics, then you can find almost all sorts of parts and gear, hardware and stuff there. But back then at that time, I know my folks wanted me to try to work on finishing my education, so I had to do that. I finished Lincoln High School at that time and going on into college at one of HBCUs. Of course, I'm Shaw Bear, Shaw University, and worked on a bachelor arts degree there in social science, and still trying to work on things there, and then get started in the work. So I started out with some audiovisual stuff at a high school, and then got into teaching, and then from that point on, I was living in an apartment complex, ran into a ham who happened to have a mobile rig, and he was showing me that, and got interested in what he was able to do with that. And then he let me use his HF rig, which happened to be a Heathkit. Yeah, he only gave me the rig, and I had no mic, no what you call it, no key. So that I never forgot. And it wasn't until down the line, after I started working in Durham and Mary, that I ran into the DFMA, the Durham Club, and that's when I got my license started, KG4NNT, and got into ham radio, and then it's been quite a wonderful experience and ride, and I've enjoyed it. And of course, I have a vanity call now, N4JQR.
Oh, last but not least, I think we got Tim. Where is he? There he is. Okay. Okay, you are spotlighted. Go for it.
Okay, name's Tim, Kilo Charlie 1 Tango Whiskey Romeo. And I just realized, looking back, that I now have had my license for 10 years and 6 days. What got me started in looking for a license and so forth was back in 1960 when I was 8 years old, and my grandparents, we used to go up on Cape Cod and stay with them for a couple of weeks. They used to summer there and then winter down in San Antonio, Texas. And they had an Airstream with an Olds 88 that would pull it, and they also had a Carmen Ghia. And she would drive the Carmen Ghia, he would drive the Olds and the trailer. They would talk back and forth on the CB radio, which I thought was really cool. And so later on, got myself a CB radio many years later, and then said, oh, I should get the next level up, should be amateur radio. But I've always had a problem with repetitive fine motor controls. Doesn't affect most of my life, but instruments and trying to do a CW just doesn't work. Let's see. So that's why I had to wait until I found out that the Morse code requirement had been removed. Spent most of my time growing up in Connecticut, a little bit in Massachusetts, and my first job was working at a small Texaco gas station that had a very small showroom for selling new cars. They only had spot for 3 cars, which is good because he represented Triumph, Peugeot, and MG. So he would have one of each in there. And I learned a lot about Cosmoline on cars. From there, later on, I worked at Electric Boat and worked as a ship fitter and worked on some of the early 688 class and then the early 726 boomers, helping to put them together and so forth. And one comment I've always said is, at least for when I was there, as far as I know, no submarine ever sank that came out of the Groton Electric Boat General Dynamics Division shipyard due to manufacturing defect. So I was happy about that. From there, I went over to the Groton Public Schools for a while, worked as their MIS support analyst, which was back in about 1990. And they didn't know what that was, but they knew that that's the person responsible for all the desktop computers and then for all the Xiplex routers and connecting all the schools. Whoops, am I out of time? I guess.
You got 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very quickly, while I was in Connecticut before I moved down here, I got involved with several amateur radio clubs up there and the Museum Ships Weekend event where we helped represent the Nautilus submarine, November 1 Sierra, and also got involved with Red Cross Disaster Services and their amateur radio setups for each of the shelters so that if communication was compromised, boom, they would be there. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
All right, Tim, very good. And we've got one more that I did not see him on the screen, but there he is. Now, okay, I see you now, Sam. You are up as soon as there you go. You are there, and welcome to the group. All yours, Sam.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm Sam Tanous, KJ4 VWG. And let's see, I've always been interested in radio. I was listening to my dad's shortwave radio as a kid, and I was just fascinated. And then I started making tapes, and I would tape odd sounds in between bands that you hear, digital communications. That was kind of fun. I taped over. I had an uncle who was a missionary, and he would send us these tapes of his sermons. And I quickly got into trouble and taped over a lot of his sermons on the reel-to-reel that he gave us. But that was the beginning of my troubles. After that, let's see, skipping ahead to college, I went to University of South Florida, studied electrical engineering, and then went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta and studied more electrical engineering and got a master's there, and then promptly went to work for IBM up in upstate New York, where I worked on it was logic synthesis for the mainframes. We would try to optimize the designs and make them smaller. And then I got transferred to RTP with IBM. And then not long thereafter, I was asked to transfer back to Vermont with IBM, which I did not do. So I left left IBM and went to teach for a semester. I didn't really know what to do, so I just wanted to teach at Wake Tech. I taught a little math. It was a lot of fun. A little like the Gabe and the Sweat Hogs, if you remember that sitcom. So the math was a very hard sell, but it was a lot of fun. And then I went to Cisco Systems, where I stayed for about 17 years, long time. And there I worked on various communication protocols, mostly as a software engineer. And time's almost up. And mostly protocols and routing protocols. And then now I'm at NVIDIA doing more systems type software code. And I got started with ham, where this wonderful teacher, Meg Millard, KI4LLL, was teaching an after school special session for my kid, who was 9 at the time, and got her license. And so I told her I would get my license as well. And that was in 2010. And I've been playing with radios, a lot of digital modes and things like that ever since. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. All right, I hope everybody had a good time with this. I think everybody has had the opportunity now. Charles is waving. Hi, Charles. Do you want to say something, Charles? Go ahead. You're muted.
Myself. No, I wanted to share a little video with you guys here, and maybe I might embarrass the. Let's see where we at here. I'm gonna stop my. How do I share my desktop? There we go. Share screen. Stand by.
Remember, we're recording this. It's going to be on YouTube. Be careful.
Okay, nah. There's not gonna be.
Come on, Charles. We have to work Monday.
Okay. Hang on. See that?
Looks like Joe.
Yeah.
For the benefit of those that don't know, the gentleman on the right is K4SAR.
From you I never can sever. Say you'll be mine more.
I think we're having bandwidth problems here.
Okay, guys. Thanks for letting me show that. Okay.
Thanks, Charles.
Make it a big bang out of it.
Joe's not here to introduce himself, but you can tell one of his other hobbies, other than ham radio, he's really into barbershop quartets.
Yeah, does a fine job too. Let me tell you guys.
Okay. One thing I would like to say, oh yeah, Charles, if you could unshare.
I am. There you go.
Okay, very good. Thank you. At the beginning of this, I said, if everybody enjoys this, then we'll let you know whose idea it was. If nobody enjoys it, then we won't let you know. So, John, would you please stand up, sir? KX4P. Let me get this camera around here. Okay, we had a board meeting, and as you know, John is in charge of all of our programs, and he has a heck of a time. We've got 110 people in his club, and you would think that we could. I was almost to that. I was almost to that. There was 110 people in the club. And if you look around, you probably know the 5 or 6 or 7 that have done the programs over the last 2.5 years that I've been president. And so John said, I've got an idea for a program. Why don't we turn this around and we'll get all of the club members to actually be the program. And I got to sit down. Okay. So we'll get all the club members to actually be the program and we'll have them do some introductions. And the one modification I made, and I changed it from 2 minutes to 3 minutes. So other than that, this is exactly what John suggested. The board thought it was a fantastic idea. So John, I thank you very much. You ought to, okay. Hang on a minute. Let me get the microphone over to you.
Just make a comment about programs. We really do have some wonderful programs and we've had suggestions for the future and I appreciate that. But one that came just the other day was Steve sitting here, KZ1X, called me up and he said, this is such a great idea what we're doing tonight. And he offered a alternate to this. So I'll tell the board about it later and maybe in 6 months we'll have something similar to this. It's equally entertaining.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, Wilson has a couple words. He wanted twice the time, so this is how he's going to do it.
I don't need another 2.5 minutes, I don't think. Did anybody meet Bill, whose last name is Polish or something, and it has lots of Y's and Z's and W and he can't pronounce? And his son Dan at the last field days. Anybody remember Dan? Very well spoken young boy with curly hair. Well, Bill has a call. I don't remember what it was. And Dan has a call. And Dan had his general at field day. And of course, we encouraged him to stay with it and get on. And I thought those of us who are proud of getting an early license should know that Dan came by my table at the Rars Fest and very proudly showed me his certificate of completing extra. Dan is 10.
You say Dan is 10? I'm impressed. I'm impressed. That's great. Okay. Sit down. The cameraman is telling me what to do tonight, which is normal. She tells me at home too. Camera person. That's right. Okay. Made another mistake. Okay. That pretty much, unless anybody has other comments, that pretty much wraps it for tonight. Next month meeting, May 13th, 14th, whatever the heck it is, the second Tuesday or second Monday of the month. I promise when I send the note out, I'll try to get the date right. I did not this time. I was on April 9th instead of April 8th, the first time I sent it out. Will be field day. Dave is going to get us kicked off for field day. That's not that far away. You probably saw a note go out from Dave earlier, maybe a week and a half ago, trying to round up the band captains and get things kicked off. So that will be part of the program for May. And then you're going to get the deal with Fred and me again for the second half. If you go back to what we did last month for the program, we talked about emergency communications and the various types of interests that the folks in OCRA have. We both appreciate everybody taking the time to use the email that Dan sent out to click on the link and go redo your interests and select what type of emergency communications you are interested in, or if you're not, that's also acceptable, because what we wanted to know was how many do we have in each of the 6 or 7 categories. So what Fred and I will be doing is talking about what the next steps are so we can kind of keep this moving. And if I screwed something up, you can correct me later or correct me now, but that's really what we want to do. You know, and again, there's no pressure for somebody to say, I really want to do this, sign me up, because we really want to make sure if you signed up for something that you understand what you signed up for. If you have not yet signed up, or you want to change what you signed up for, go ahead and make the edit to your profile. If you're not sure what they mean, go out and take a look at the OCRA YouTube video from our April meeting. Fred went into great detail on a lot of the emergency communication stuff. I went into the detail on getting your family, your home ready before you deploy or get involved in emergency communication. So we'll do the second part of that. So that's May. But think field day. You know, COVID's not here again. We're going to get together. Going to be, I believe, at Wilson's house again. You know, we'll hear more details in May. Dave, any comments about field day you want to make, or you want to wait for next month, or I'll walk over with a mic if you have anything.
A lot of the same.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dave. With that, I think it's a wrap. Thank you all very much for coming. And thank you for being the program tonight.